before we start with the session proper, there are just a few thoughts which I would like to give. There was a book written by Bernard Lewis, and the name of the book is What Went Wrong, Western Impact and Middle East Responses. Just talking about the Middle East. But there's a paragraph in that which is very pertinent, and he said, I'm just quoting the book directly, when things go wrong in a society, in a way, and to a degree that can no longer be denied or concealed, there are various questions that can be asked. A common one is, who did this to us? The answer to a question thus formulated is usually to place the blame on external or domestic scapegoats, to blame the other. And the other question that could be asked is, what did we do wrong? Now, these two questions are important. The first leads to a conspiracy theories and paranoia. And it generally does not lead to a solution because you're trying to look for solutions somewhere where they do not exist. And the second leads to an alternate line of thinking. Because when we put the onus onto ourselves, and when we say, what did we do wrong, it leads to the second line of thinking. How can we put it right? And it is really for the second part of it, how can we put it right, that we have assembled here, that we in Clause we thought we would do this seminar. And we will actually put it onto three levels. We will look at the, and we are basing it specifically on officers. It is really, when we are talking about the issues today, the human resource development, it is focused towards officers only. We will look at the men's aspect in a separate seminar later, but this particular one, it's a very vast subject that will be at officers only. And then we thought we would look at three aspects of the officers. Do we have a shortage of officers? Again, we need to ask the right questions. Because when you place the question in the, on the line, are we short of officers? And then we answer yes, perhaps we are not framed the question correctly. Because in a sense, we are not short of officers. You are short of officers at a particular service bracket. And you are not short of officers when you cross that service bracket. So obviously when we need to ask a question, we need to project it at the right point. Why are we short of officers between 0 to 10? And what can we do to set that right? Because when you go for 10, when you look at 15 to 20, 30, and right up to the Chief of Army Staff, you know, you're not short there. All vacancies are filled and there's no shortage. In fact, there is a problem. Actually, you're actually getting surpluses in some areas. So the problem with this, now, if we don't ask the right question, we will not get the right answer. So that is one of the issues I think we will address. Also, what do we do about the intake, the quality of the intake, the quantity of the intake? And the first issues will be addressed by General Sabharwal, who has been our former actually general. Now, the people have come into the army. What do we do to improve the enhancement as far as the professional military education is concerned? How do we make life so attractive in the armed forces that people would like to come, they would like to serve with great pride? It is not that we don't have that pride. The Indian Army has won every single conflict which we have taken part in. We even won a conflict with Pakistan, thought we could never win. We won the Kargil War, which as per all Pakistani thinking, especially what the chief had said, is that it cannot be done. Yet, people are the Indian Army. Please come, sir.
Is there a place?
Come, right here. So, whenever the chips have been down, the armed forces of India have always delivered, which obviously means that the officer intake, our training concepts are right. So there's nothing to, when we are talking today, we are not really trying to denigrate or deny what is great about the armed forces of India. It is simply to look at how can we go ahead. And then when we look at the third aspect, okay, here is an officer, they put in 30 to 40 years of service. What do they do post that? What can we do within the service to ensure that once the person leaves the service, you know, he'll be welcomed with folding arms, he'll be welcomed with open arms in the entire environment, and he can be gainfully employed. Because the type of experience, the type of capabilities, the type of leadership qualities, and the discipline, put all these factors together, it really makes the armed forces material perhaps the best this country has in this entire business. So, getting on with the seminar, I'm very happy to welcome General Mukesh Sabharwal. He has been the former GOC of 15 Corps, and he has also been the Adjutant General. The bio profiles are placed there, but I really don't think we need to introduce any of our very eminent panelists. To speak on in-service conditions, General Ata Hasnain, again, a GOC of 15 Corps, former GOC of 15 Corps, and who's just limited office recently as the military secretary. And for the third speaker, we have General Rao. again a very distinguished speaker, and to get him actually they had to fly him in from outside, and because of his very busy schedule and his itinerary, I think he happened to be in Jaipur, and then from there he's come. Jaipur, sir, you were? Jaisalmer, and from there, of course, he made it very quickly to come here at great cost to himself. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invite. So, without much ado, I hand you over to the first speaker. Each speaker will speak for anything between 30 to 40 minutes. There are no breaks in between, so if any of you would like to have a cup of tea or something in between, please feel free to walk out, have your tea, and you can bring it inside. Over to you, Mr. Agarwal. Sir.
I think it was very
General Katoch, my fellow panelists, General Rao and General Sven. I'm really very privileged to find myself amongst these illustrious panelists. I also look at old gurus and veterans and colleagues who've been with us, and I find that they are cosmet of mine who, whenever the AG or the AOP, so we have a long time in PPOC, and we discuss these issues, threadbare over not only coffee but over a drink. So it's very good to see all of you here, and I must say categorically that thanks to the director, we find that we are discussing a topic relating to the human capital management in the armed forces today. Because normally we find the think tanks, delving more towards strategic aspects and international relations and what have you. So I think this is really a very, very good start. We did have one, I remember when we had one on the human rights which we had initiated, and Klaus had very kindly accepted, and we ran a joint, I think that was about 4 years ago. So after that, this is the first time I'm seeing this happening. I'm really, really thrilled about it. And to have the AG, the DGPP, DG recruiting here as well, I think it gives us a shot so that we'll be discussing this particular issue today. As General Katoch has mentioned, I'll just be touching upon the first part, and I think he structured it very well with the three major issues: the intake, then what we do at the in-service management, and thereafter the post-service retirement, what exactly, how do we empower them. That is something we need to do. So I'll start with the first one, and that is the adequacy and the quality of intake of officers. I think that is the critical part which we have mentioned, I think, and really focus on this itself. Of course, I'll also touch upon, which is very, very important to make up this shortage. These are some of the points which I would like you to touch upon, but let's really go on to the first one. What is the current status? And as he had mentioned initially, where is the pinch? And as you can see from this, although there is a 22% deficit overall, it is lieutenant colonels and below where we are finding that there is a crunch, and 24% of that is where we are deficient in. We are deficient in this part. So how does this impact us? I think that is more relevant. There may be other issues where they impact us, but what I'd like to touch upon is the operational implications. Let us see the first one. Overall, we've seen this over the years, be it Pakistan or against China, there has been no reduction in deployment or employment of forces. Not at all. In fact, there has been an increase. So the number of units which are there deployed have in fact increased and our field peace profile, I pity the SD directorate, the guys have been trying their utmost to balance this out, but this is one of the reasons. The hard scale on the efficiency, there may be some, with a sense of bravado, some CEOs might say, oh, give me one good company commander, an adjutant and a quartermaster, and one youngster to do this running around, and I'll be able to run my battalion and give me these 5 good guys. Yeah, it can be done, but can it be done effectively or efficiently? That is what we are going to say. I mean, we do not expect what we had, say, in 71, when we were fighting the war at that time, the authorized strength was 20 plus 1 RMO and we had 22. Gone are those days, we are not even expecting that. But let's be realistic. Realistically, hard scale, which is roughly around 60%, if you go below the hard scale, there is going to be a problem. But I won't delve more into that because then I will be stepping into other stuff. And I don't want to do that because that is what he's been doing this last year or two. And I'm sure he is the best judge of that. But junior leadership constraints. When we meet young officers, we meet the CEOs, what is it that they say? So you're sending these boys right from the academy, within 6 months, he is there and he's commanding the company because I don't have the guys. And after these 3 or 4 lieutenants and captains which I have the 2 IC and there is nobody there. So those are the problems, but where is the crunch? That's that junior leadership. We have to be with these boys, but if you groom them, you give them that time, they do well. And that is something which we are proud of as an army. Be it Kargil, be it any other operations you take, they have delivered. So it's not that. That means the kind of people which we are getting, the kind of training which we are doing, even at the right basic level, has been very good. But then, quality training, which is necessary as an officer develops, is definitely necessary. Nobody is denying that fact. But are these boys available? Because you cannot renew the battalions and those capacities which are there in the academies, in the training institutions, sometimes go a-begging, except for, of course, the mandatory courses like the JC and the others. The other places we do not have. We have the capacity, but we can't train them because people cannot spare. Let us just see the quantum of intake. This is something which is a reality check. I just want to do what people have been saying about it, and let's see. Our authorized intake is 2240. I'm just taking the last 5 years. You see it from 2008 onwards, it's been a steady rise, and last year we were at 102% or so. That means whatever is the intake that is authorized, we are getting more than that number of officers. To go a step further, let us see the training academies, the IMA, the NDA, the ODA, where there is a capacity of 1800, we've got 2100. In IMA, we have 1650, we've got 1897. And OPA Chennai, 639. I believe this year it's gone even beyond 700. So, if you notice, something from 15 to 30%, it's over the capacity which is there present today. And that means the numbers which we are seeing here, they have been, and the academies have been doing a fabulous job, by scrounging places, NDA, the box rooms and the central lobbies and everything has been taken in so that these people could be, in fact now they are staying, because since the 16th squadron is taking some time to get constructed, the porta cabins have been put up. There have been a lot of debate. I'll leave that later to the question. I don't want to delve on it now, but definitely it's one point that we have to make the space available. But the fact of the matter is that overflowing academies as of now. But there are areas of concern. There are 2 types of entries we have, as you are all aware. One is the non-technical entries, and then there are the technical entries. Our non-technical entries basically are the Shock Service Commission non-technical and the IMA. And the authorized capacities are here for you to see, 850. This is an area where we are not, and I'll talk about this later why. But the fact is, we are not being able to subscribe fully to the to these two places, that is IMA and OTA as far as the direct entry and the shock service non-technical is concerned. But the silver lining, there is always a silver lining. Silver lining is these 4 entries. You see for yourselves, and I put them all in one so that you can compare them. The TES, that's been our success story over the years. I think in the wisdom, whenever it was started, they really never realized what a great success this is going to be. Today, you go and talk to any battalion commander, you talk to any institution. I was recently in Mao and happened to talk to the SIJC wing, and he's saying, listen, they're just sweeping everything. They have the best results, the maximum number of AIs, etc. is the TES. 170 is the authorization, we are at 298. And the shortage is because we don't have place. Although the cadet training wings at all 3 places, that is the MCEME, the CME and the MCPE, have definitely increased the capacities to ensure that we can absorb a few more. And I'm sure this the technical graduate entry, 120, it's up to 315 now. Shock service technical used to be floundering in double digits till about 4 or 5 years back, and this one has now gone beyond. So if you notice, 1.5 times to 3 times the number of authorization, that is the number of people who are joining. Even the UES was not technically a technical entry to that extent, but definitely even there, we have been doing very, very well. Let's take NDA for instance, the surplus availability. I put these portions separately and not as a full year, because we noticed that in June and January, the numbers who joined are definitely varying. But the point is the surplus which you are seeing here. In fact, I'd like to just quote one instance. 3 years back, 2.5 years back, there was a similar case when we had about 700 people who had done the medical, everything, they were ready to be absorbed. And normally we can take, since we take 300, we go up to about 400, 420. So some people have missed out for some reason and have joined somewhere else. But still there is about 300 odd left. And one boy wrote to the Prime Minister, says, in the Parliament you keep debating and saying that, I know we've got a shortage of officers and here we are fully qualified, ready to be absorbed, and you are saying I don't have a vacancy now. This is a dichotomy. What do we do? And that's a fact. That surely is a fact that we have qualified people, and the best of selection systems has qualified them through a UPSC exam, through a service selection board, and through a medical, and then we say that we can't take it. So it is a problem. What do? We come to that. But the fact of the matter is, this is absolutely true that we have much more surplus available qualified. We gave one suggestion to the government about sponsored education scheme, but we will talk about it. And now and that's why I put question marks and an exclamation mark. I don't want to really call it a myth or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, people who are not fully aware do talk in the layman's word that nobody wants to join the army. No, nobody wants to join the army. We have over the years from 280,000 in 2009 NDA, it's now over 5 lakh aspirants who start off with that. We have the vacancies, you see the ratios for yourself. 1 is to 845, that means we take 1 out of every 845 guys. So aspirants wise, if you see I put the non-technical above and the technical below, and you can see for yourself, in every case, UES is a little different scheme, so we get what we really have the capacity and what we have authorized, so that is not a problem. I don't know the figure of this last year, I'm not very exactly sure, because this is done more by commands and what is the involvement of commands, so that is where it differs. But by and large, you just see the ratio. So, let's talk about, there are people not aspiring, or they don't want to come. But then, I just want to say is that if the induction status also, I just thought I'd put about last year. Again, the non-technical entries is where we have lesser than the vacancies. that is IMA and OTA, the non-technical entries, as also the in-service entries, that is the ACC, SCO and the PCSO. Other than that, the status-wise, we're doing well. Before I come to this, I just want to say is that numbers-wise, quantum, I'm just finishing my quantum part yet and I'll take up the quality next. From what it appears, there is everywhere we've got overflow, surpluses, etc. But there is a question mark which I'll come to once I finish the quality part. Now let's take the quality part. Because people might say, yes, you're getting a lot of aspirants, but are they good enough? I happened to talk to some instructors and junior instructors in BIOS course, who's at Quantum now, and took this opportunity to talk to some of them. I said, there's a lot of guys who are coming in now, and when you were, say, 6 years before, you also came with a BIO. Do you find a difference? By and large, these people say, no, sir, I'm not. To us, because this fellow come to me, groomed, he's done a 6 months, 8 months, or whatever, and a lot of them have seen action, they're coming from there, and to them, they didn't appear. So, but there was a conflict. Some of the senior lot feel that the youngsters are not good enough, but the junior lot, when you're talking of 6 to 8 years instructors and those people, they find them kind of, maybe it's a generational thing, I don't really say. But when you look at the stringent criteria that we follow, again, if you take numbers alone, for UPSC, for an ND aspirant, 5 lakh appear. And how many of them even pass the written? 1%. IMA 4%. Go down to this, the numbers which we are bringing them in. And thereafter, how many of them are called for the SSP? How many are taken? I'll come down to that a little later. The percentages. It is talking me that the criteria are very, very stringent. And therefore, you are picking really the cherry of the cream. You're not talking of the cake at all. So, the quality when we're talking, then let's talk about the SSP standards. People say, vaguely I've read it, number of magazines, etc. They say the standards have been lowered and people are not doing it. The standard was 240 marks 40 years ago, it is still 240 marks, it has not been altered at all. I can tell you with authority, absolutely it has not been altered. Even then you had barely less than 1% who were crossing 400 marks. Even today you find an odd time getting over 400. You have some over 300. The bulk stays between 270 and 300. That is what, or 240 and 270 in fact, that is what. Yes, I won't keep it back. There is a slight difference. Earlier, our borderline cases were less. Our borderline cases are those between 237 and 243, those borderline. They were less because there were more people where all the three, the GTO, the IO and the psychologist had cleared it. And now, we do not find the number, the percentage of guys getting cleared from all three. So, there is a qualitative difference, I am not denying it. But yet, whatever standards as an organization, as an institution which we set for ourselves, we are not diluting that. So, my point is that when we see the kind of people who are coming through, etc., is there an aberration? Somebody would say, so and so officer committed a suicide, so what, why didn't you guys check? These aberrations are 1 in a million, so you really can't quote that as an authority that we are not checking. TES. I mentioned this is a success story. I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, figures. We had about 20,000 of these who opted, who cleared, and we couldn't screen all of them because SSPs didn't have the capacity. Since the SSP did not have the capacity, we got only 6,500 per screen. The minimum marks for which they can even apply is 70%. Now all these 6,500 were over 82%. All of them. That means you can imagine, the people who are applying itself. This is a scheme where you're getting the best guys from out of school, and we are saying that out of school is the time when these chaps are most impressionable and we can get them. And that is why the TS, because the base is so good and the training which they are getting in these places, the material which is coming out is excellent. And that has definitely been a success. The technical threshold. If I may just mention that in the IMA, although I told you that non-technical numbers were low, you saw that. But out of these non-technical, 20% are engineers. There are so many engineers. I think this is because of proliferation in the country, the number of more engineering colleges which have opened, the number of people who are not getting jobs possibly, and they come inside. But the fact is that the non-technical entry has over 20% technical graduates or people who are engineers. So the technical threshold, what happens with this is that our arms, armored corps, infantry, everybody starts getting these technical guys into the thing, and the CEOs like it. If they are getting one or two technical over the years, every second year they get one of these boys, they are very, very happy because he's joining in the non-technical, but he's basically an engineer. The surplus I want to talk to you about the ND. Yeah, one thing, it's a good thing which has happened only over the last year and a half or so, is that the Navy, which requires, technical qualification that they should be, and they have started absorbing this and taking them into their direct entry, the Navy. So that means these boys, luckily, a part solution has been found where they are not being wasted out, and at least they are being absorbed. But the point which I mentioned to you about the sponsored education scheme was one thing which we put up to the government, and that has not come through so far, I think. Because when we talk of things coming through with the government, we have to think of a gestation period of 5 to 7 years is the barest minimum. It could take longer. Our biggest problem is that, but coming back to this, the sponsored education scheme, we said, well, here you got these 300 odd guys who are fully qualified everything, and the non-technical part of them, at least put them into, give them a stipend, let them go to some normal college 3 years, and after that, clear that his SSB is passed, maybe you do a medical, because he will have undergone some problems, do the medical and let him go through the shock service commission, because at this stage he is impressionable, and in the 3 years which you are doing, give him a little stipend. While he is in college, maybe for 2 weeks or 3 weeks every year, do a little like the ROTC guys do it, etc. You make him undergo some session, maybe the NCC can take it, or something, can at least give them some kind of basic military, so that he is aware and he is engaged. But that has again not come through because there will be no celebration when he goes to college, something. These are personality based things which come through the MOD. We've been replying, I think the AG branch, most of them lose hair by the end, they get out of the AG, get fed up and frustrated with this. The last point here, the quality part is excellent quality of women officers. The numbers may not be enough, but I'm talking of the quality. When I went to the service selection center and I saw and it briefed me, and this is when I'm saying it's the same case, it continues. That the numbers, the type of women they are getting who are so motivated and all to join, they are very good. And when they go in, and the basic thing is the first few years of service, outstanding. That is the result. Problem starts thereafter. That I can talk about later. But excellent quality of women officers at the intake level. You can't deny that. That really there is a massive, when they go, they don't know how many people to fail in that. That is the kind of standard. But let me talk about the women officers. Now, everybody does say that, we must, why don't we give them regular commission, why don't we stay? But there are problems which General Stan, faces more than we in the ages branch people make policy, but the MS branch, oh guys, really have to face the brunt of this particular part. But the fact of the matter is, yes, there is PC, because there is a cadre system. Everything to work on cadres, and no better person than you know how to be able to understand and to explain that. These cadres, there has to be upward mobility within the cadres. You can't have somebody just moving up and the next card just goes, because therefore, we've done, even in peace, just like JAG for instance, already today I believe there are about 30% already women inside, because every year you are taking that, you have to have an embargo, in the sense that there has to be a balance. But there is PC applicable because there is no command involved, and that is the whole linkage. And the other part when we go ahead is this specific gender bias. We should not reach a stage when there is a reverse gender bias. And I'll give you an example. And this we've discussed, in all three services it is the same problem. As, even if they are posted to EME battalions, to signals, to engineers, at GOC 28 there, I had we were building this fence and we were, through the snow and and there are people who are living on that area right in front. So when we're talking of the EME, well, the EME was absolutely involved in, the energizing that fence. The engineers were involved in constructing that fence. The signals are involved in providing communication. So if they are there and they are only put as the adjutant and the quartermaster at the base, then it's always the other guys who are out and they are never out. I went to, although AMC is not strictly a part of this, but I went to 4 to 8 field ambulance and the CO was critical. He said, so I provide relief of medical officers to the entire division, which is so huge. But I have been posted now with the third lady officer. Out of 10, if 3 are there, then how do I provide you with, I can't send them out. And the other guys are just getting things, and then one of them goes for a longish leave, then a bigger problem. So we should not reach a stage of a reverse gender bias. We have to find places, slots where they can fit in. They are good, we are not denying that. But the right places. So that's another debate, and I don't think we should go purely into that. But I thought I'd bring it out. The high-level study group, it's not only been constituted, it's reviewed, it's given its recommendations, etc. But you know where it is stuck. It hasn't come back. So when I say, what is all this fuss about? If I'm saying quantum is good, quality is good, so if everything's so hunky-dory, then what is the fuss about? The fuss about is that despite all this, we haven't made a dent in that shortage. That 10,000 to 11,000, it varies between 500 and all. But now you raised 2 divisions for the east. In the next plan, another 2 divisions and something more is going to come. So our increments which are there are increasing. What we have to do is increasing. So if that is increasing, we have to then either cut out from somewhere else and then do it. But this gap, and wherever we are getting increments, the increments in the problem which are 10 years and below, that is where the problem is going to come. So I think that is where we need to, the fuss about what we should do to increase. It will be incremental. This shortage, this improvement will be incremental. If anybody thinks in the next 6 months or 2 years will be improving, I'm being very, very realistic. 15 to 20 years is the vision, is what you should be thinking of doing something. It cannot be done over 2 years or 5 years. Considering the gestation period, if it was the control was with the armed forces to do things, it could have been done. Okay, so what are we doing to do the efforts? This is very, very crucial. One, cadre structure, making the city attractive, capacity building, and these 2 entries. The cadre structure, as you are all aware, the ABC committee made it clear we have to have a small regular cadre and a large support cadre. 1:1.1 was the recommended ratio. We are still 37% surplus in the regular cadre and the 74% efficient support cadre. And when you're talking of the support cadre, we're talking of the shock service entry, we're talking of the in-service, we're talking of the, the redeployment and all this. That all constitutes a support cadre. It was 7:1 in 2009, made a little dent, it's come down to 5:1. But we need definitely to look towards this, because this is where the thing. Now, somebody asks this question, then why don't you, don't give permanent commission to the service, short service officers? Very, very simple solution. But that is what I'm going to reduce it. Our overall numbers yet are so little that unless I give permanent commission, I can't even make it to 10 officers in a battalion. What to talk of your hardscape. So we have to be realistic. It will have to be done gradually. Some of this will have to be come down, some of this will have to be made up. Next is making SSC attractive, and this is very important. And this is very, very important because you look at the psyche of a person when he's joining, knowing fully well, he joined say about 22, 23 years, 10 years down the line or 14 years down the line, I'm going to leave. What is the stage? The stage is that he is now married with little children and various other things, and with the corporate world outside or anything. Is he short of a job? No. The so-called sidestepping and lateral absorption in every pay commission, not an iota has moved. Nobody in the ministry, whether it is MOD has been saying so, but the MHA has, which is where one will find out the other ministries, it just does not happen. So if it does not happen, then watch out. Let's make what we think to make it attractive enough for him to be able to at least go. I'm not talking about the men, that is a separate issue. A lump sum grant, or we said PEPL, or so if he does 10 years, he gets one last year of service as study leave on government kharcha, he goes, does, so that he prepares for a second career. If he is doing 14, he gets the last 2 years. Lump sum grant, very meager is what we proposed, say, but that could change, the figures should change, say about 1 lakh a year, and very marginal, so nothing about it. ECHS facilities. What's he asking for? This number of short service officers in the army today, and somehow this irks you very badly because it is our own. It's the medical corps which wants to say no because they have a so-called clout with the MOD and they come and scuttle the whole thing. I'm being very, very frank about it. Sexual violence services. Today, the number of ECHS members, beneficiaries, are in the region of 40 lakh. 40 lakhs approximately. What are the numbers of the short service commissioned officers today? According to AG branch figures, it was about 8,000 or so, MS branch figures about 5,000-6,000. Give it 10, give it 20,000. And we are saying 2 per then 80,000 at best will be the people who are benefiting. Out of 40 lakhs, is it going to make a dent? When we can give this to Coast Guard, to the SSF, to every other people for this ECHS facility, we can't give it to our own the guys who go fight and sacrifice their lives. We don't want to give this. Ridiculous, but that money is going to come through. I'm sure the perseverance of the army and the navy and CSD facilities again will come. The last one is relaxation in civil services. This is again something which we asked for. That please, why don't you commit these guys who are leaving? Give them that there used to be that erstwhile two papers or something like that. Some kind of a concession. But that is not being done, unfortunately. Capacity building, and that's the last basic slide which I have, is enhancing the vacancy. So ultimately, you can do whatever you like. You might say, I'll increase whatever you want, but unless you have the vacancies and the capacity to absorb them, nothing else will work. You can attract more, you can do whatever, but can you accommodate them? Infrastructure is not only accommodation. It means the training areas, the firing ranges, the sports fields. It means instructors. You know how long it took to get this service and the civilian hockey instructors for say India took them 7 to 8 years. They fought and fought and fought. In fact, before General Rock came into the AG project, much after he left, they finally got them and they got into a scam because there was a problem. That is a different issue. But the fact is that when we go in for capacity building, the answer lies in that suppose you want to say I am enhancing the capacity of India by 120 cadets, then with this 120 cadets, what else matters? One is accommodation, one is administrative facilities, the other is instructors and everything else, even the support staff, that also might come as a package deal and it should go because we realize now that because pehle wo kehta hai ki let this thing come to me, then the Indian takes it up. I have now got increase of 120, now give me this, it won't work. I think we need to do it as a package deal altogether. OTA GAA of course has come, which is a boon, but we need to again, and I think they learned the lessons, both Army headquarters and they're going about it the right way of getting these sanctions, etc., and not going in a hurry so that the quality and everything else will maintain. But the last one, the SSBs. No, it's taken us so long to get this approved, the 7 additional SSBs. The story is that it's the Army which had projected this for the 2 SSBs we want increased. The Navy and Air Force had not done it at that time. But rightfully the MOD asked them, do you guys also want? They said, yes, we also want. The Navy already had 2 of the Army, which was being run by them. Now, the 2 plus 3 they have given, basically they are only supposed to have 3 and revert the earlier 2, but that is a separate issue. The point is it is taking so long. And also the problem is varying degrees of their capacity to select. The numbers in the Army SSB, they can do about 1850 or something like that. Whereas the Air Force and the naval ones can do 2500. Because they've got more, they've got an additional GP or a psychologist or whatever, there's more capacity. Now, the Army is taking that up, but it's going to take time knowing that. It's so much, it's their stock, the numbers, 80% of the officer strength of the entire armed forces in the Army, and we've got the least capacity to do this. So unless we increase this capacity, get more numbers, it will not happen. And just give you one disclaimer. Numbers who come, those who are detailed for SSB in the third column which you see, and those who report, I'll just show you the percentages. It ranges around between 40 to 50 except for one which is 65. This is what it is ranging. That is the percentage of people who actually report. And the guys who actually find clear stage 1 and the final thing and then they are selected or at least they are recommended, see by being that again portion which is highlighted, you find that that is the numbers which we are actually getting. So if I increase the people who are reporting, this will make a little difference in what the numbers I am getting. So increasing the reporting thing, the recruiting branch has done a fabulous job. The amount of things, they are becoming so flexible to if a chap is coming from the northeast, say Manipur and usko sector hai Bangalore, he says, sorry I can't go because I've got some other things. Okay, change, go to the work. We're trying to do this, even the numbers, the ticketing, so that the time frame is what we want to reduce. That time frame is something which is very critical. Instead of the 5 days plus medical, if it can be reduced by 1 full day, we are with the DIPR, with everybody, to see that even that 1 day makes a difference to them because at the time when we go and appear in all these exams and what have you. So, really speaking, when I'm talking about this, their focus at that time is this UPSC entry we've tried, we've been able to bring down by barely a month or so from them because hard nut to crack. But our entries where there is no non-UPSC entries, where we can, I think they've already, the recruitment director has done something, but I still feel there is a, like TES for instance, if we can, they appear in May, they have a, this thing next January, jahar unka SSP hota hai, and they, so almost a year it takes. I know there is a requirement of timing, etc., but if he could hasten that he loses, he does it in 6 months instead of 12. You're getting that is the impressionable part, these 10 plus 2 wala. He passed, by that time he got into some other engineering college or something and then he says, yeah, this is a good life, he does not want to leave it. So those are certain areas which we need to take care of. And I will only say this, that, you know, when I was talking about this point about the short service being at that 37, 38 hours, if you just compare it, this is a little digression for half a minute, Mr. Chairman, and that is, when you look at the men, how it is even worse. But there is a parallel. That's why I'm saying a Jawan gets ration, roti, kapda, makan, everything while he's in service, transportation, free warrant to go to his house, everything. The day he retires, he is on to half his salary as a pension, and all this other thing is suddenly removed. By this time, the Forge has given him so much, aspiration, because good schooling, MAP has come up, he wants to come to cities. Now children don't want to go back to village. Children education allowance, which was there while he was serving, is not there anymore. He is in a quandary and he has to do it with that. So therefore, empowerment. Unless we do it, nobody else will do it. And similar, that's why I'm making this parallel. For the officer, we tend to feel that he'll take care for it, about for himself and he'll do it. I think we need to really do it, and I'm sure General Rao will take that. And this point about out-of-box solutions, we all talk of out-of-box solutions. But we must remember, with this government, when I talk of MOD, the gestation period is so long that even one proposal, it takes almost 4 to 5, 7, 8 years to fructify. If you start thinking and change mid-course something totally different, I mean, you will find that, and all of the people sitting here have seen this nothing happening. I think that is where we need to go. Thank you very much. Whenever the question time.